My best friend got arrested at school. Oh my god, this story is insane. Alright, let's get into it. For the record, this story was sent in by one of my viewers. If you'd also like one of your stories read, send it to the email address in the pinned comment below. Also, subscribe to the channel and join my Discord. Alright, let's get into it. I'm an 18-year-old male, and this happened a while ago. It all started in the 4th grade when I met a kid named Jay. The thing is, Jay was always kind of odd. For one, he was always a bad kid, never listened to the teachers, and he would always crash out when things didn't go his way. Because Jay was so spoiled, the teachers would have to reward him with toys and stuffed animals just for being normal. Oh, you didn't punch a kid in the throat today? Good job, here's a stuffed animal, right? A little weird, very spoiled, but mainly normal. So the thing is, Jay and I were really close during elementary school, and we would kind of raise hell together, right? Like, we would cause a lot of trouble in our classes, and our teachers really fucking hated us. We were such bad kids that in 5th grade, we actually got separated from our classes. And that's when we stopped talking mainly. But we still hung out sometimes. And this is where the story gets interesting. Because during 7th grade, Jay started getting into some really weird stuff. He started to become fascinated with and things like the constantly talk about it and bring it up into conversations. It made me feel weird, and I didn't want to talk about that stuff with him. So at this point, I kind of stopped talking to him because I wanted to start distancing myself from Jay. Fast forward a couple years, and Jay and I are sitting in a history classroom together when all of a sudden, our teacher screams as she looks down at her phone. Someone had sent her something terrible. Jay had sent her cheese pizza. How did she know it was Jay? Because this idiot sent it from his personal account. Apparently, it had been some plan he came up with to mess with the teacher. And he thought it'd be funny, like it was some big joke or something. But the teacher didn't take it like that. The teacher immediately called the principal, who called the police, who then came into the room, and they put the classroom on lockdown. After the cops arrived, they were told the details by the teacher. And after they heard the details, the cops literally arrested him on the spot. At this point, the whole classroom was freaking out. Mind you, I'm watching this all happen live. The cops took Jay's phone, and the principal was thinking even of locking down the entire school because of this. And that's when the situation got crazier. The cops wanted to keep everyone in the classroom for questioning. So it ended up where pretty much everyone that Jay had ever talked to in that class was held in that room for questioning because the police said they were all suspects. So it was like 10 kids all kept in that same room at the same time. And they didn't want to separate the kids in case one of them had the cheese pizza, so they couldn't delete it. So they decided to question Jay in the room with all the other kids. So the interrogation began, right? First they asked him, for one, if he had any more cheese pizza on his phone. And he said no, obviously, in the least convincing way ever. You know, Jay being at this point still kind of smug. He doesn't actually think anything's going to happen to him. You know, he's a spoiled rich kid. He's thinking, oh, I'll just get out of it, as I always do. Right? And that's when they said, yeah, well, you might say you don't have any, but we're still going to look through your phone anyway, regardless of what you say. And at this point, the look on Jay's face after hearing this was insane. It was straight shock, right? It scared the hell out of him. And I think that's when a flip switched into his brain that turned into, how the fuck do I get out of this? And then they started questioning him more on this stuff. They asked him, who sent him the pictures? And he turned to who at the time was one of Jay's closest friends, because I really wasn't that close with him anymore. He turned to Xavier. He pointed at Xavier and said, Xavier sent me the pictures. At this point, Xavier started going off on him. Xavier said, fuck you, I didn't send you shit, loser. Stop trying to lie on me. Like, how could you do this? I have a 5-year-old niece that I babysit. Don't you dare put this on me. See, like, Xavier was going crazy. He was screaming at Jay, yelling off at the top of his lungs that he was innocent, right? And the thing is, from the outside looking in, it seems like Jay is trying to frame an innocent man for having CP, right? But that all changes if you've ever met Xavier, all right? the thing about Xavier is he has a little bit of a reputation around school for being a little off, right? Because not only is Xavier into the same weird stuff as Jay is, but Xavier's reputation is kind of peculiar. Apparently, this guy was said to hit on sped girls. I'm not even joking. Xavier would deadass hit on sped girls. Like, I'm talking, he would be crushing on severely autistic girls. And he would like creep on them and stuff. But the point is, Xavier was a freak, and everyone knew that. And not only that, but he was also one of Jay's closest friends. So when he said that he didn't send Jay those pictures, no one in the room actually believed him, except for the cops who didn't know his reputation. So at this point, Jay was trying to blame Xavier for sending him this cheese pizza, and Xavier was trying to get out of it. So they started arguing. And Xavier said, "Why would I send you a video of a 9-year-old girl?" And then the cop said, "How did you know the video was of a 9-year-old girl?" And Xavier went silent for a second. And after a long pause, he said, "Oh, I just assumed it was a 9-year-old." So pretty much, Xavier damn near outed himself for having known exactly what was in that video, which means that he probably did send it to Jay. So at this point, it was pretty clear to everyone in that room that Xavier pretty much knew this was going to happen and that Xavier was involved with Jay. It was like pretty obvious that Xavier was probably in this with Jay. But the police didn't have any hard evidence to arrest Xavier. So they had to ignore him, and they just continued to question Jay in front of the entire class. So then the cops asked, "Jay, who else was involved?" And I think at this point, Jay started rattling off anyone he could fucking think of, bro. It was so funny. He mentioned Xavier again. He mentioned me. He mentioned 3 of my other friends who didn't even know Jay. At this point, he was trying to mention anyone that he could, hoping it would save him. So at this point, Jay is trying to desperately save himself by trying to push blame onto someone else. But it didn't work, because they ended up arresting Jay and taking him into the station. And from what I heard, when they searched Jay's house after he was arrested, they found thousands and thousands of files about and instructions on how to make a homemade Eventually, he got a year in juvenile detention for the stunt he pulled. And I think he moved ever since then, because I haven't seen him since. Alright, I think that's going to be all for the video, guys. If you liked, subscribe. Alright, peace out.
Subscribe if you're a hater.